Welcome, new and old friends. I just have a couple things to say, and then the stories will begin. Before you drift off into the dream realm, please remember to like, subscribe, share, and comment. If you'd like to find out about my social links, my website, how to help the channel, check the description box. Now turn off your lights, make sure your doors and windows are locked. It's time to dream. Don't buy books off the dark web. By Drechenaux. I can't be very detailed specific here due to the nature of my job, but I will try my best to communicate the story as best I can. I work in a cybercrimes division of a law enforcement agency. That's as specific as I can get. And I want to be clear here. Most of the stories that you read about the dark web are outright fabrications. The tales of red rooms and the stories of hiring hitmen are particularly universally untrue. Most crimes take place on your normal everyday web. On Tuesday afternoon, though, I got a call saying that there was a new case for me. Well, the officer on the other end of the call didn't seem to be too sure if it was a case for me, but wanted me to have a look anyway. I went down to talk to two young boys. Both of them were teenagers, likely still in high school. I was wondering what this was all even about when one of them started blabbering about something that they got off the dark web. Apparently, the two of them were doing a TikTok or YouTube channel. I can't care to remember which one it was, but they were looking for things to buy off the dark web. Again, honestly, there's very little shady activity that goes on the dark web, unless you want to buy drugs. So the two of them were mainly disappointed. Until they found a site that sold books, one of which they bought. I was handed the book in question. I put on a pair of gloves and flipped through it. It was filled with photos of a young lady. Initially, they were of her smiling in locations such as that of meadows, a city square, though as it went through, they became more provocative, for a lack of a better term. She began wearing outfits like a maid uniform or a catgirl cosplay, and the last few photos were of her wearing nothing. "Is this all you wanted to show me?" I asked, wondering what the fuss was about. It was then that I was handed a card, one that had come with a book. It said, "Thank you for purchasing, dear customer. Inside you can find a treasure trove of photos of a young girl. Though that's not all that's special about this book. To make sure that this is truly one of a kind, we made sure that you can get the full experience. So feel free to gently caress the leather as you think of her. Again, thank you for your purchase." At this point, I should probably mention for those who might be unaware of what anthropomorphic bibliography is. It is the name for the practice of binding books with human skin. I probably don't need to say this, but it is illegal. Even assuming the skin was from a cadaver, you run into laws dealing with human remains. This card, though, from what was written on it, it was made to sound as if the skin had been taken from the girl while she was alive. Well, either that or she had been killed and then skinned specifically to make this book. I thought the whole thing was an elaborate joke. My first hunch was that the two boys were in on it, but they seemed too scared for it to be a hoax on their end. And I interviewed the two of them separately, and their stories held up. Alright, perhaps they were telling the truth, but that didn't mean that the book was really bound with human skin. Even if it felt like leather, it was most likely animal leather, and all of this was for added flavor. I told the officer in charge of the case just that, and said that there was no real need to investigate further. Though I did give the young boys a warning regarding buying things off sketchy websites. And that's when the case ended. Or so I thought. As it turns out, the officer in charge of the case decided that on the off chance that it was real, to get a book tested. And it turns out the leather binding the book was, as a matter of fact, from human skin. As you can imagine, interest in the case surged after that. We were dealing with a potential murder case now, and we called the two boys back. I was also brought back on board to try to get to the root of things, and I was able to get the Tor address of the site they used. Unfortunately, all I got was error messages when I used the link. I did some more sleuthing, but that got me nowhere. Frustrated, I turned to the other source for help, but there was little progress that I was able to make. Further analysis of the skin revealed that it did belong to a woman, and one of Caucasian descent, which all lined up with what I saw in the photographs. But there was little else that the forensics could do, as the process of preparing the leather made any other tests unviable. A DNA test of the skin didn't reveal anything, and we searched far and wide to see if anyone recognized the girl in those photos. No match till date. The case was about to turn cold when I managed to find an unexpected lead. On a forum, I caught wind of someone else who had purchased a similar book, and was confused regarding the veracity of what was claimed about it. It was 3 states over, but we managed to track down the poster, who was a woman who had bought it out of morbid curiosity. Forensic testing revealed the cover was made of human skin as well. She had a different Tor link, one which I tried, and this one actually worked. The site by itself was nothing impressive. It was a basic as could be kind of old site back in the 2000s. I would have thought it was a cheap prank based off of that alone. But the 2 cases made me hold back my skepticism. I took screenshots of the website and confirmed with the 2 boys who first came to us with this case that this was the site we were looking for. Both of the books had been mailed from fake addresses from mailboxes within large cities, so there was little to go on there. Given this, we decided to try the site for ourselves and placed an order, only for nothing to turn up. If anything, what happened was that the site's URL no longer worked. And it's here where things took a sinister turn. One of the boys, the one who had actually ordered the book, went missing one day. He was coming back home from school, and then, well, there was no further trace of him. A manhunt for months came up with nothing until one day, the other boy came to us saying that someone had delivered a piece of paper to his house. It wasn't a normal piece of paper. It was a roll of parchment. Testing it later revealed that it was skin of a human, and DNA tests showed that it was from the boy who had gone missing. Upon it, written with what was later confirmed to be blood, were the words, "Stay out of our business." I don't like to admit this, but that single incident spooked me beyond anything I had ever encountered. I'm not really used to being in the line of fire. Yeah, I know I'm part of the law enforcement, but my work is usually done behind computer screens. I didn't catch a wink of sleep for 3 nights after we confirmed what it was. I vividly remember how his mom broke down in tears when we gave her the news. There were no more leads aside from that anyway, and I honestly want nothing more to do with the case anymore. People who would gladly skin someone and then use that skin are not people I want to be in close contact with. Well, the case might be over, but I'm leaving this here as a general warning. Do not buy things off the dark web, even if it's most likely a joke than not, because sometimes they might not be kidding. Growing up, my father's favorite quote was, "Family ain't blood. It's the folks that stick by you through thick and thin." I found out how much that meant when the looters broke through our barriers, and all he had to give was me. My best friend bought a dog on the dark web, by Dante's Ghost 92. It was a chilly evening a few weeks ago when my friend Jason and I found ourselves indulging in the dark corners of the internet for our particular amusement. We would quite often peruse the dark web, trying to find the strangest things we could in that lawless place. We had been doing it for years, since we first got access to the dark web back in high school when Jason found out about Tor. We'd seen everything, from drug sites to snuff sites. But on that particular evening, a particular link caught our attention. It was titled Doolittle's Bazaar. Intrigued, we clicked the link. A digital menagerie showcasing exotic animals of all kinds opening up in front of us. It was obviously run by poachers and boasted a large amount of endangered and rare species. Mesmerized by the bizarre collection, we scrolled through the listing, indulging by the curiosity on display. It had everything from mundane tropical fish to incredibly rare big cats. We were amazed. Amongst the virtual oddities, a seemingly innocuous pop-up materialized, advertising a dog, claiming it was unlike any other. This dog is made just for you. It's astonishingly intelligent, capable of comprehending and executing any command. The perfect companion, it read. Its price tag was unusually low for what was being offered. Almost too good to be true. Being the animal lover out of the two of us, Jason decided to take the plunge, succumbing to the allure of owning a unique and bright canine companion, as well as the possibility of rescuing the creature from the hands of the poachers. They're probably mistreating the poor thing anyway. You know what poachers can be like. I've seen videos online. Besides, no one else in the world will have one like it, he said, as though trying to justify his purchase. I warned him that it was possibly a scam, but he was determined. As though he had already made up his mind, but was now coming up with a justification. He always got like this whenever it came to animals, always leading with his heart. I know it's risky, I'm not stupid. But what if it's legitimate? What if the poor creature is suffering and I can do something about it now? He said. With a nonchalant click of a button, he entered his payment details and placed the order. A sense of apprehension filled me as he clicked the button and the screen flashed payment processed. I wasn't sure why at the time. I think it was just a general distrust of the dark web. After all, we've seen a lot of things on there before. Well, said Jason, let's see what happens. Worst case scenario, I lost some money. Best case, I rescued an animal. We carried on searching through random links in the dark web, but at the back of our minds was the excitement to see Jason's new dog, as well as the anxiety as to whether it was even real at all. We could never be too careful on the dark web. Jason went home later that night, and the events of the evening gradually faded from our minds. Several weeks passed by with no sign of the dog. There was nothing from the company on the dark web either. We both assumed that it had just been a scam and that Jason had just lost his money. I told you so, I goaded each time I saw him. A few days after that, an obscure package arrived at my friend's doorstep. It was a huge box, larger than anything he had ever ordered before. We could easily fit a full-length sofa inside and still have room to spare. Stapled to the top was a note, printed on plain paper with no discerning marks. It read, "Your very own unique companion is here. We hope you enjoy it." Below, in red text, were the words, "No refunds, no returns." Wasting no time, Jason called me. "It's here, the dog from the dark web, it arrived. The box is massive, but I can hear it moving around inside." He practically shouted down the phone in excitement. Point 1 to Jason for always being right. What? Really? Okay, you win this one, Mr. Awesome, I responded, amazed that something actually had turned up. "I'll swing by after work and meet your new furball." "Sweet, see you then," he said in the same excited tone. Then he hung up. I couldn't help the feeling of excitement welling up in my stomach. I wasn't exactly an animal lover myself. I could take or leave them. But I was still excited to see this new dog. As soon as I finished working, I made my way over to his house as quick as I could, interested to see what made this dog so unique. Knocking on the door, Jason slowly opened it, his head poking out gingerly from behind it. "So, where is it?" I asked, trying to glance over his shoulder. "Come on, I want to see it." "Yeah, okay. Come in," Jason said, his voice quivering slightly. A stark contrast to the confident tones over the phone mere hours ago. I made my way into the house, but there was no sign of the creature that had been delivered. It's in the basement," Jason said, again, that shaky voice. Now, very confused by what was going on, I followed as he led me to the basement. As soon as he opened the door, I was met with an odd stench. Not something I'd ever smelled before. It was a sickly sweet smell with a hint of iron. I couldn't help a feeling of apprehension in my gut as I stared down the staircase into the black abyss. Inside the basement, it was dark. There was a small, old light in the middle of the basement, illuminating a small area and casting long shadows across the floor. As I made my way down, the smell was much stronger, nearly suffocating me. I could make out sounds, too. There's no way I could describe those sounds. They seemed like a low, guttural noise, but there was a high-pitched, pained quality to it. There's no way that sound was made by a dog. As my eyes adjusted to the gloom, I could see a large metal cage in the far corner of the basement. It had thick iron bars and a heavy-looking padlock on the gate. The floor was covered in sawdust. The sounds seemed to be emanating from further within. "Come here, girl." Jason beckoned again, a quiver in his voice. My eyes remained fixed on the cage, awaiting the reveal of his peculiar new companion. The creature inside it obeyed his command, moving into the dim light. I had to stifle a scream. There was no way that thing could be a dog. It was hairless, with large, red-looking welts all over its body that were held together with stitches. If I had to describe it, I would say that it appeared as if someone had cruelly amalgamated human components to create a macabre imitation of a canine form. Its breathing was the same, low grunt with a high-pitched whine, as though its every breath was pained. Its face looked stretched, like the skin was pulled back, almost like a grimace of constant agony. I almost felt sorry for the wretched thing if it wasn't so repulsive. "Oh, God," I said, not sure what else to say. All words left me. "I know it's horrible, isn't it? I didn't think this is what they'd send. I was expecting something like a really obedient doorman or something, but not this thing," Jason said. I could hear the sadness and disappointment in his voice. He almost couldn't bear to look at it either. "It looks like it's been so badly mistreated. The poor thing." "Can you return it?" I replied, still looking at the thing in the cage. That same sense of revulsion filling me. "No, there's no returns. I'm stuck with her," Jason said in a frustrated tone. "Why don't you just give her to a rescue center or release her into the wilds or something then?" I asked. "I can't do that," Jason snapped, almost offended. "Look at her. Nobody take her for one, and she doesn't look like she'd survive in the wild on her own. She needs help." I felt so sorry for Jason. He seemed genuinely upset by the creature in the cage that he was now stuck with. He was a compassionate person, and I could see that this dilemma about what to do and the need to help was eating away at him inside. "All right," I said. "If you're going to keep the thing, we can't just call it that horrible thing. What are you gonna call it? Got any ideas? Demon Doggo? Scooby Don't?" He thought for a second before saying, "Lucy." Lucy had been his grandmother's name. She passed away when he was really young. "Yeah, I think I'll call her Lucy." In the days following Lucy's arrival, Jason retreated further into his house, isolating himself from friends and social interactions. Whenever he managed to catch a glimpse of him, an uncharacteristic skittishness or an edge hung about him, a stark contrast to his usual demeanor. He still speak and behave like the Jason we all knew, but he seemed distracted, as though he was constantly preoccupied with something. He also started dressing differently, wearing long clothes that covered most of his body regardless of the outside temperature, whereas before he was a shorts and t-shirt kind of guy. Every time I'd ask him about Lucy, he would respond with something like, "She's good, yeah," or "She's getting there." But he wouldn't go into much detail. You could see it on his face, a look of conflict, as though he wanted to confide something in us, but he couldn't bring himself to. In the weeks that followed, Jason had gotten worse. It was rare that anyone could get in contact with him at all. When we did see him, he was now a skinny, gaunt imitation of the healthy, happy Jason we knew before. He looked incredibly pale and sickly. He also developed an odd limp in his right leg. When we asked him about what was happening to him, he would laugh it off, saying the doctors were investigating. But his expression didn't seem to betray the same feeling. He looked worried, almost scared. On the very rare occurrences that he did come out with us, he normally only stayed for a couple hours before making some excuse to go back home. We're all worried about him, unable to ignore the signs of his deteriorating condition. I mustered the courage to check in on him. As I arrived at his house, I pressed the doorbell, waiting for a while for an answer. When none came, I knocked on the door, assuming that the bell may not be plugged in. As I knocked, the door opened slowly. It was unlocked. This was strange. Jason didn't normally leave his door unlocked. With a sense of unease now stirring in my stomach, I made my way into the house, shouting Jason's name in the hopes that he would hear me. His house exuded an eerie silence, and a deep sense of foreboding enveloped me as I made my way further into the house. It was empty. There was no signs of anyone there at all. It hadn't been cleaned in what looked like ages either. The sink was overflowing with washing up, and the bins were at the point of spilling over. I shouted for Jason again. Still no answer. I was beginning to get really worried about him now. Growing increasingly concerned, I combed through the house, my anxiety escalating. Amongst my search, a thick booklet perched on top a cabinet caught my eye. Its appearance suggested recent handling, urging me to inspect it. Picking it up, I turned it over, reading the cover. It looked like a manual with a picture of a creature that looked like Lucy on the front. "So you own a Semigus Canis," was sprawled in the large font at the top. Perplexed, I flicked through the pages. Serenus Canis was Latin for bloodhound. The creature my friend had purchased on the dark web was a very rare and old subspecies of canine that sustained entirely on blood. They were so extremely rare because of their metabolism. They can only go 6 to 8 hours between feeds until their bodies begin to digest themselves, and they starve to death. Horror and dread washed over me as I realized the extent of my friend's situation. I continued searching the house with more frantic urgency, shouting for Jason, but still receiving no answer. Then, from the corner of my eye, I noticed that the basement door was wide open. I could smell that same sickly smell of decay wafting up. It was stronger now, and even more nauseating that I knew it was due to decaying blood. I could also hear sounds from down there, the same low growl and whine as before. But there was another sound mixed to that I couldn't put my finger on. Tentatively, I ventured into the depths of his basement, terrified as to what I would find there. I couldn't bring myself to shout for Jason. It sounds silly, but the sound in the basement sent shivers through me, so much so that I was too afraid to utter a sound. As I neared the bottom of the stairs, I poked my head around the corner to the dim gloom. I discovered Jason laying unconscious in the middle of the basement under the light. He was pale, deathly pale. I ran over to him, my fears being pushed to the back of my mind, overpowered by deep concern for my friend. I rolled him over and tried to wake him, but he was completely unresponsive. I checked for a pulse, any sign of breathing or anything else that would show me that my friend was alive. There was nothing. I shook him again, begging him to wake up. The feeling of devastation was crushing. I was doing my best not to break down, but I could feel the hot tears welling up in my eyes. Jason, my best friend, was gone. I was so confused. What had happened? I knew that he was sick, but I had no idea he was this far gone. Why hadn't he said anything to me? I pulled him close and hugged him, beginning to cry, as though if hugging him hard enough it might bring him back. He was cold as ice. He was really gone. Slowly I laid his body back down gently onto the basement floor. As I lowered him, I noticed a piece of paper had dropped from his clenched fist. I turned to pick it up, and as I grabbed it, my eyes perceived something that I'm not sure I'll ever forget. Emerging from Jason's right leg, a grotesque and sinewy appendage, resembling a nightmarish vein, slithered into my line of sight. Its fleshly color clashed starkly against his pale skin, with a labyrinth of capillaries that seemed to wither and pulse with pulsating crimson fluid. The eerie, almost dance-like undulation propelled the liquid in a disturbing rhythm, leading the eye among the horrifying path into the abyss of Lucy's cage. As if called to action by observation, the tube disconnected from Jason's leg with an audible pop before slowly retracting back into the cage. Then there was a low growl as Lucy made her way forward. She was much larger than last time I saw her, with red stains around her mouth where the tube was receding. Her stomach was also distended and bloated, a deep red color compared to the rest of her pale frame. She looked me in the eyes with her cold gaze and let out another threatening growl. I began to back away, noticing the heavy padlock of the cage door on the floor just beyond Jason. A jolt of fear shot through me. She was loose. Without a second thought, I ran. Fear clenched my heart as I scrambled up the stairs, propelled by the sheer survival instinct. Reaching the top, I slammed the door shut and barricaded with a chair. The door thudded seconds later, as though Lucy was throwing herself at it as hard as she could. The door rattled violently and the chair visibly shook, but it held. She made an awful noise, like a roar, but nothing like I heard before, but she couldn't get out. Desperation clouded my mind as I grappled with the dilemma before me. I couldn't let that abomination escape, not now that I knew what it was. But nor could I bear to confront the monstrosity that killed my best friend. I felt an overwhelming sense of entrapment and exhaustion, as if the weight of the entire ordeal was crashing down on me. With the main danger now secured behind the door, the reality of the situation settled in, threatening to drown me in a tidal wave of emotions. The grief I felt in the basement when I saw Jason's body, my fear as I realized Lucy was loose, and now the dilemma of what to do with her. I made my way over to Jason's couch, needing to sit and try to process this, trying to figure out what I need to do next. As I sat down, I remembered the piece of paper that had fallen from Jason's hand as I lowered him to the floor. The piece of paper I was picking up when I noticed the horrific proboscis. In the ensuing chaos, I had stuffed it in my pocket, not wanting to lose the last remnant of my friend. Taking it out of my pocket, I smoothed it out. It was a note addressed to me. It would make sense. He knew I'd be the one coming to look for him. I began to read the rest of the note. Jason had written the note in his final moments, trying to explain why he had been so distant and strange lately, and apologies for how he had been acting towards me and my friends. He explained that he had not had any other way to feed Lucy, so he had been using his own blood every 8 hours to feed the creature. He knew it was draining him, gradually killing him, but he didn't want her to die. She was a living thing and in danger, he said. She deserved to live, but he wasn't sure how much longer he could keep it up. He asked me to forgive him, going on to say he valued our friendship above all else. I placed the note down, tears welling up in my eyes. I sat there for hours, finding myself grappling with the knowledge that that creature's thirst for blood had been what took my best friend from me, and if I didn't act, it would soon lead to its demise. But my best friend sacrificed his life to keep that thing alive, and if I let it die, then he'll have given his life for nothing. I've still not made a decision yet, but I can't hear anything from the basement anymore. I guess there's no harm giving her a bit of mine for the moment, just to keep her alive while I decide. Yeah, just this once. Buddy whined and clawed at the locked basement door, but his owner had already escaped the burning house. Firefighters were shocked to find a badly burned boy at the top of the stairs, his fingernails ripped off in the wood of the door. And now the stories have come to an end. If you're still awake, well, I hope you fall asleep shortly. And the sounds that you hear in the background are going to take center stage for no more than 30 minutes to help you fall asleep or stay asleep. But if you are awake and want to hear more stories, I do have playlists for that as well. Sleep tight and don't let 42 bite.